Dokie, so just gonna give some more people a chance to come on. We've hit 8 o'clock, so any questions anybody has, do feel free to pop in the comment section below. Just a quick check, I went and got myself a new mic so that you can hear me better. So any of you that are on, do you want to tell me if you can actually hear me? That would be great, because the last thing I want to be doing is to continue to talk if none of you can hear me. So any one of you, just let me know you can hear me, please. That would be great. Come on. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you. Some static. Oh, hey Jay, hey Neve. Just give me 2 seconds. A small bit of static. Just let me see if I can bring that down. How about now? Is the static gone? No, I'm probably lower, but I can speak louder. Yeah, so I suppose any of you know how this goes. It's my live weekly Q&A. Now, unfortunately, no voice now. Great, 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 great. How about now? Very low, very low. Okay. Right, so I guess I'm going to bring it up to that. I presume you can hear me, but there's probably a little bit of static as well with it. Hi, Mag. How are you? Um, no sound at all. Mark, Neve, can you hear me? Oh, wait. I have my gain all the way down. Can you hear me now? Grant, so you can hear me now. Right, so hi Mag, hi Neve, hi Mark, hi Jay. So for those of you who haven't been on one of my weekly lives before, basically how this works is that I come on. If you have any questions or anything in relation to any of the work that I've been doing, you just give me a shout. I will try to answer any questions live on air that I can answer. If I can't answer any questions, I am also happy to go away, try and find you the answers, and then come back to you. Just so that you're all aware of that. But I suppose while I'm waiting on a couple of you to come up with questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the stuff that I've been working on this week, including in relation to the motions that I brought forward to council over the last week or so. So, as many of you be aware, through listening to me rabbit on here, when it comes to municipal district meetings, we can bring forward 2 questions and 2 motions. Hi Paul, if you want to pop me a private message, I'm happy to have a chat with you. If so, you get to bring forward 2 questions and 2 motions to a municipal district meeting, and then with regards to a full council meeting, we get 1 a month as well. So this month, my motion on councillors having a voluntary method by which to return. Thanks, Peter. I like my mask on my back wall too, and thank you for giving it to me. So I put forward a motion for councillors to have a voluntary way to be able to return their expenses. Now, unfortunately, Kildare County Council said that there was some legal issues around that. And while I do accept their response, I have some issues with their response, because I have noticed that councillors in other councils have had the opportunity to return their travel and subsistence payments. Now, the reality is travel and subsistence payments probably only amount to about 50 quid a week. But as somebody who saw the impact a loss of 50 quid a week had on a lot of people who were on the pandemic unemployment payment, and as somebody who's kind of struggled for money in my past, 50 quid can make all the difference to a lot of people. And so the reality is that Kildare County Council aren't going to do anything about it. So I proposed at that meeting that instead of that, the councillors who wished not to receive their expenses, so obviously we still have to receive them, but then I asked that it'd be up to us to then come together, those of us who wish to return our expenses, and instead of returning them to KCC, that we would then come together as a collective and use our expenses for a community project either in our local areas or on a county-wide basis. So that'll be a piece of work that's ongoing. So that was a motion from January's meeting that got pushed forward to. It absolutely could be, Mark. But the reality is that there are other ways for organisations like that to receive funding. So it may be more useful to spend this on something, for instance, to let's say commemorate the victims who've died as a result of COVID. Do I feel family carers should be seen in the same category as healthcare workers? Absolutely, Anne. And I think you'll hear my colleagues in the Dáil say the exact same thing. The way I look at it is that family carers are healthcare workers. They save the state a ridiculous amount of money. That would have and obviously it's not about money for family carers. They care about their families and they want to ensure that they have the best quality of life possible. So I know it's not about money for family carers, but the state doesn't seem to realise how much money that family carers save them every week, every month, and every year. And I think it's abhorrent that they're not being put into the same category, considering most family carers have to go do the shopping for the person they're caring for and then come back. It would make sense to me to have them in the same category as healthcare workers, given that it would reduce the possibility of them bringing the virus back into a home where a vulnerable person or a person with complex health conditions could be. I hope that answers your questions. Hi Maurice, how are you? So, so just to go back to that, Mark, yes, it could be donated to an organisation like Hope D, like Newbridge Family Resource Centre, like the Dining Room Newbridge, Newbridge Tidy Towns, any number of really, really worthy organisations in and around the town or indeed the county. But it could also be used for something that may not necessarily be able to get funding from somewhere else. So for instance, if you look, like I said, at commemorating those that we've lost as a result of COVID, it could be useful for that. It could be useful for any number of celebrations. How long have I been working on the Defence Forces project with Cian O'Callaghan? So I've been chair of the Defence Force Policy Committee since I've been chair of the Defence Force Policy Committee since pretty much just after I was elected, actually. I would work quite closely with some of the people from the wives and partners of the Defence Forces and some people from the likes of Peter Fora. And even in certain circumstances, I would work with people from RACO. So the reality is that you're probably seeing more of my work in relation to Defence Forces now because the review of the Commission is coming up. And the reality is with the review of the Commission, unfortunately, and it's really disheartening to say it, but unfortunately it seems to be nothing more than a tick box exercise. We're not including the voices of the Defence Forces, the Civil Defence, Emergency Planning and Response. We're not including the voices of those people who should be heard. Like, I mean, if we want to sort out our Defence Forces, if we want to actually engage in a proper review, we should have all those voices at the table. And I think I'll go back to something that almost every Social Democrat will tell you, and it's pretty much like a mantra of ours, and that's nothing about us without us. Now, as anybody is, we have been guilty of unfortunately not including certain voices when it comes to certain policies, and we endeavour to change that. But the reality is that this is central government. They know what they're doing, and my worry is that was out walking the court today, came across 2 fox carcasses. Where would I report this? So you would report that to Kildare County Council's Environment section, and that's environ at kildarecoco.ie, Johnner. Or you can ring Kildare County Council on 045 980 200 and ask to be put through to the Environment Department or the Environment line. And once it's reported, they'll be able to deal with it properly. So, Peter, I hope that answers your question. If you have any other questions for me, I'm happy to answer. Seen a post today, the Category 4 will start to receive their vaccines in March. Do you know if this is still on the cards? Honestly, the reality is, Mark, we don't know what's still on the cards. We're not being given proper data from central government. We're not being given proper updates from central government on vaccine rollout, on how they're rolling out vaccines. And then we see that they're reducing capacity of the HSE by, I think it's approximately 500 doctors in an effort to save money. All of the stuff that's going on a lot of the time beggars belief. And I can understand why people are frustrated and angry and upset because, if you're not being given the proper information, you're going to fill that vacuum with something else. And that's where I worry that a lot of the misinformation and stuff like that on Facebook is going. If you're not giving people the proper information, if you're not being honest, open and transparent with people, which is part of the reason why I do this, they're going to fill that information void with something else. I'm not even going to comment on the fact that my sister is in there laughing at the fact that somebody said foxy instead of foxes. So, again, what about the empty houses in Kildare area? You have a lot of families in need of a home. Is there anything to be done, and what can be done, Chris? Yeah, so empty houses is a really, really complex issue. And I'm aware that people see empty houses and they don't understand why they're empty. So there's a number of reasons why a house could be empty. One of those being, so many of you may or may not have heard of the Fair Deal Scheme. Fair Deal Scheme is essentially how... Yeah, Rachel, you're right. Kildare does have the most vacant houses. And a lot of those houses would have come from... a lot of those houses registered on the vacant sites register would have come from the works of groups like Housing Action Kildare, which I'm involved in, and like any other groups. Like, the reality is, if you see a vacant house, you can report it on vacanthomes.ie. Anybody can report it on vacanthomes.ie. What they ask is that you have the address of the house, a GPS coordinate of the house. So if any of you are out walking on your long walks or anything like that, because we're all trying to get healthy in March and April, which is great. My niece tried to get me out got me out for a 10k walk this morning, and I have been dead all day. So and then, sorry, so just to go back to what Marie said about the homes. So the Fair Deal Scheme, essentially what that would result in is you have elderly people who are in nursing homes. Now, I obviously would much prefer for people to be able to still age within their own communities, but there will always be circumstances where people need more care and more support. Now, it would be great if we could offer that care or support within their own homes, but unfortunately it is not the case. So those houses, if somebody goes into a nursing home, cannot be sold and cannot be rented out, because what that can do is that can actually bring the person's income up to a level that they're no longer entitled to the Fair Deal Scheme. And it's a bit of a ridiculous name. It's a bit of a ridiculous name, like the Fair Deal Scheme. It doesn't seem very fair when there's housing left sitting there and family are afraid to rent or sell or move on for fear of their elderly family member or their infirmed family member not being entitled to support in their old age if they were to do that. Now, the other reality is that we have any number of homes that have been bought up by what are called REITs, which are international investment companies that will see a home go on the market, and they'll swoop it up so that they can sit on it for time immemorial until it gets up to a certain point and they can sell it on, or it gets to a point where it's so dilapidated that they get to knock it down and build something else. So we'll see, like you'll see circumstances where a house is knocked down and replaced by 2 or 3 apartments. This is them maximizing on their profits, and this is something that we do need to work on, and we do need to be honest, ban. they shouldn't have, like, international companies or international investment funds shouldn't have the opportunity to come in, purchase up all these houses, leave them sitting idle while we have people quite literally dying on our streets. So that's another element of it. Then you also have the council element of it, the social housing element of it, where these homes are in council ownership. Um, Now the reality is, with a lot of the homes in council ownership, there is a turnaround time period and a turnaround time. Um, so unfortunately, the turnaround time is nowhere near sufficient. We have houses sitting idle for months, oftentimes over a year, for oftentimes over a year before we place another family into it, and that's just honestly not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. So I hope that answers both your questions, Rachel and Maurice. So Paul, COVID is part of the history in Newbridge. The town has lost people to the virus, and it might be great to have an open submission for the public to create a peace. Absolutely, Paul, and that is the kind of project that I would love to see. So, like, I mean, I know the expenses of those councillors to who want to return them. So, like, so far the only ones I know that are willing to return their expenses are myself, Nuala Colleen, Bill Cllr, and Aidan Farley. Now, those are my three Social Democrat colleagues, so that's why I can somewhat answer for them. And that is something that I think we would love to see happening. Now, the reality is the more councillors we have on board, the more likely something like that is to come to fruition. So it would be great to have the kind of money to create a proper memorial and properly memorialise those who we've lost. Have they started using the vaccine shopping centres? No, Mark, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I'll try to, if you want to rephrase that. Johnner, what's your opinion on schools looking at making primary schools wear masks? Listen, the reality is anything that will reduce the spread of this virus, I consider a good thing. I'll give small children a lot more credit than most people give them. They seem to be aware more than most. Now their awareness of the virus worries me, because I worry that they're getting stressed or anxious, but I'm not a parent. So other parents will know more the impact COVID is having on their children. And again, with the masks, like, parents will know better. Now the reality is even before primary school kids were being asked or even considered for wearing masks, we had a situation where we had anti-maskers in this town plastering posters and stuff like that. So we need a situation where it's equal and equitable for all. We need to ensure that people are informed and people know how things work going forward. Like, I think any of us have seen any number of people reusing single-use masks, or pulling their mask off, stuffing it in their pocket, stuffing it back on their face. I'm going to be 100% honest here and say that I have been guilty of that. It's part of the reason why I have moved predominantly to single-use masks. I will wear it into a shop, I will take it off, I will snap the cords on it because I don't want any animals kind of getting strangled on them. I will sanitize I'll put it in the bin, and then I'll sanitize my hands and have another mask for use at a later date. But I do have my multi-use masks, like the one here that Peter was talking, like the one there that Peter was talking about earlier on, and I will continue to use that where I can. Oh, sorry, Mark. So vaccine centres. Yeah. So we need to have the correct levels of vaccines coming into the country. Again, there's issues, and we're struggling. Well, I don't know that we're struggling. We're not getting fully up to date information in relation to the vaccines that are coming down the line. So I won't know when they're open. We won't know if and when they're open. Now the reality is that a lot of groups locally are getting prepared for when they do open. There are some taxi companies that are offering free trips to the vaccine centre. I know the Free Now taxi app is offering €20 off a trip. Yeah, so Rachel, that's essentially what it boils down to. You can't have vaccines when you don't have. You can't have vaccine centres when you don't have vaccines to give out. So it does rely on the amount that we have coming in. It does rely on the different variety of vaccines. So I think people are aware now that I think I think we have 4, maybe 5 different vaccines. Now people can correct me if I'm wrong. What is the COVID test centre up on the Cllr? Is it a private or public one? I wasn't aware of a COVID test centre up on the Cllr. I can only imagine that it's probably in relation to members of the Defence Forces. So, again, it's something I'm happy to look into. It's not something that's been raised with me. It's not something that I've been made aware of. Paul, I would be in complete agreement in relation to the use of the town hall. Now, there's issues with using any kind of an enclosed space, but the town hall has high ceilings, it's well ventilated, it has 2 doors, so you can enter from one and exit from the other. So I would have presumed it would have been decent, but it is quite small in relation to if you want to do mass vaccination in the if you want to do mass vaccination in the vicinity, it may be more difficult because it may not necessarily be as easy to segregate. But we do have multiple other places. Like you could look at the Bordnamona site, which is predominantly disused, and heck, I'm sure Bordnamona might be open to something like that. We have St. Conleth's Park, smack bang in the middle of our town, with plenty of parking. It's got access to public transport. It's got access to all kinds of transport. It's the COVID Express. I do believe that's one of the testing centres that it's a private applicable test centre. It's the kind of one that people would use if they were travelling abroad for essential reasons or for any other number of reasons. But listen, I'll fully look into it and I'll come back to you and let you know. Any other questions for me, or will I go back to my update on the motions? Perfect, I'll go back to my update on the motions. So I explained how my adjourned motion from January is only heard in February as a result of time constraints. Unfortunately, that also means that my motion from February has now been adjourned to the March meeting. Now, my motion for February is in relation to the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, or CETA as a lot of people are calling it. I have called on Kildare County Council to ask for it to be referred to the Minister for Housing, Heritage and Local Government and the Minister for Trade and Finance. The reason why I've called for this is because, as many people may or may not be aware, CETA gives... My hair is blue because I got bored and I dyed it. CETA gives preferential treatment to multinational or international trade organizations. The ICS, which is the investor court system, could, now I'm saying could because nothing is concrete on it, could have seriously negative implications for local trade, for one. It could have serious negative implications for councillors being able to do their job, especially in relation to bylaws. Bylaws are one of the only legislative roles that councillors really have, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And it could have an impact in relation to our ability to plan or essentially do our jobs as councillors. Because the reality is if we were to implement something, for instance, let's say a grant that is solely for local businesses or local traders, with CETA and with the way the investor court system would be set up, technically a company could sue us for preferential treatment of local businesses over international businesses. Now the reality is I firmly believe that we should be supporting our local indigenous SMEs first as much and as possible as much as we possibly can. As much as we possibly can, because the reality is it is those organizations, it is those businesses, it is those shops that our towns and villages are built on. They are the heart and soul of our towns and villages, and they always will be. That cough was me trying to stifle a cough and then coughing anyway. So I suppose That's where I come from. That's where I've come on CETA. Now, had I have had my way, I would have been proposing a motion that Kildare County Council declare itself a CETA-free area. Unfortunately, the reality is that Kildare County Council's standing orders are really restrictive in that they do not allow us to bring forward motions that are not related to council business. So a motion like that would not be related to council business. Um, so I, so that's where we are with CETA. Now, to go back to a comment that I mentioned earlier in relation to bylaws, so I was talking about bylaws as in they're one of the only kind of legislative roles that we have. So bylaws are something that you develop in a local area to legislate or regulate in that local area. Now, you will have seen our alcohol bylaws, which now mean that anybody who's caught drinking in public can be fined. We have litter bylaws. Again, I'm sure you've all seen the ridiculous amount of litter that is around, and if we can catch somebody actually littering, they could be fined too and brought to court as a penalty on top of that. Because, like, I mean, every litter cleanup literally results in the loss of the loss of money to Kildare County Council that could be spent on other things, whether that be footpaths, whether that be play equipment, whether that be any number of bloody things. So that's where we are with the litter bylaws. But the reason why I'm bringing up bylaws is because around this time last year, I brought forward a motion to Kildare County Council to ban the mass release of balloons and fire lanterns. Now, some of you will be aware of the dangers of these, some of you will not be aware of the dangers of these. Other countries, so let's say for instance the UK, have a number of counties or county councils, whatever they're called over there, that have a ban on balloon and fire lantern releases. The reality is that fire lanterns are ridiculously dangerous when it comes to a lot of things. We've all seen the gorse fires in the Cllr, and we need to do better in relation to gorse fires in the Cllr. What's the timeline for the new playground? There is no timeline for the new playground, Rachel. The reality is that the funding has been allocated over the next period. There's elements of identifying a site which we have to do. So if you have any sites in mind that you think may be a good idea, feel free to send them on to me. I'll happily try and get the council to look into them so that we can progress this slightly quicker. Yeah, so there's elements of having a site to look into. There are elements of ensuring the proper and effective design. Like the standard timeline for any playground, if you want it to be done properly, if you want there to be proper consultation on it, if you want to ensure that it is equal and accessible to all, including children with disabilities, whether they be intellectual disabilities or physical disabilities, it could take anything up to, 18 months to 2 years if you want it done properly. I am on that. So it could take that long, and the reality is that we do want this playground to be future proofed. We want it to be big enough that it will support all children going forward, and so that it's not just another bitty piece that in about 4 years time we'll be going, oh, this playground isn't good enough, we need another playground. We kind of do need to have a flagship project when it comes to playgrounds in the town. Another flagship project that could be there is actually the expansion and kind of improvement of Liffey Linear Park as well, which will be absolutely amazing. So to go back to those bylaws, so I have, with the support of some of my friends and some of my colleagues who are in the legal profession, actually designed bylaws which I'm hoping to bring to Kildare County Council for the banning of balloons and fire lanterns. And we'll see how that goes. Now the reality is any bylaws that have to be done must go through proper scrutiny from a legal framework, and they must go through a public consultation period with the public. I completely understand your worry that your kids will be fully grown by the time it's built, Rachel. And that is unfortunate, but the reality is that we need to ensure that we do this correctly so that it is suitable for all children. we can't just rush into these things. So I've done the bylaws, I've done CETA, I've done my previous two motions. Then I suppose in relation to my motions on an MD level, so one of those was I asked for the roundabout down near Rosebery Hill, White Oaks and Rosconnell. So there's a roundabout right there at the entrance to Rosebery Hill. I asked for it to be included in the Scoot traffic management system. The council told me no, it wasn't possible. It's a single lane roundabout. Now the reason why I brought this forward is because it has been highlighted to me any number of times, the issues with children safely crossing the road down at that area, or with people not safely driving, all of these kind of things. So one of the things I spoke to the council about was ensuring that if they're not going to include it in the Scoot traffic management system, that with the new traffic management plan that we have coming down the line, that we'll do a fully holistic approach to the traffic management plan, that we will ensure that areas like Rosebery Hill, Rosconnell, White Oaks, all of that kind of a ring road is taken into account. Now, something I did ask them to investigate was either the implementation or funding of a lollipop lady. They're the school wardens. A lollipop lady to ensure that kids could cross safely and that other people can cross safely. Now they're going to look into that, hopefully. And then the other possibility that I did ask them to look into was the possibility of a zebra or toucan crossing. Now I've had lots of parents down in that area contact me in relation to the safety on the roads, and especially in relation to the exiting of their housing estate onto the main road in relation to a yellow box. Now the reality is I've spoken to Cllr County Council about this as well, and they are no longer in accordance with national guidelines and national legislation. They are no longer allowed to put yellow boxes outside housing estates. Yellow boxes can only be used for a transition from a national to a regional road, and from a housing estate to a regional road is not good enough. Absolutely, Rachel, I completely agree. The traffic is ridiculous there, and it will get worse with the new estate and the paddocks. And not only that, it will get worse as the kids go back to school. It will get worse as any number of things happen. The reality is that when it comes to school, for instance, we need to start looking at safer ways for kids to get to school. We need to start looking at a way for parents to be able to walk their kids to school instead of driving their kids to school. We do need a modal shift away from people feeling the need, for instance, to drive 5 minutes down the road instead of walking their kids to school. Now, I'm not blaming parents, because the reality is though those roads are not necessarily safe for their kids to walk, or for their parents to walk, or for the kids to cycle. So that's something that we need to look at and we need to work on. If we want people to walk or cycle, we need to make sure that we have safe segregated spaces for them to walk or cycle. Has anybody any other questions for me? I feel like I have been talking for over half an hour. No, so that was my first motion to Kildare County Council for the Newbridge Kildare Municipal District. My second motion was in relation to the addition of trees in the Kildare area to the pruning schedule because they're causing some antisocial behaviour. Grass verges are ruined by cars parking all along. It's also, yeah, no, absolutely, Rachel, and I'm working with the area engineer to hopefully come up with a solution to that to prevent cars from parking up on it. The reality is that there should be a situation where parents are, if they're driving their kids to school, are pulling into the school, letting their kid out and driving off. Yeah, Maurice, a lollipop lady is exactly what I've tried to look into getting there. But funding is the issue there, so I'll have to identify that funding somewhere. And I suppose the reality is when you're dealing with councillors, multiple ones of us will be vying for funding for multiple different spaces. So hopefully that's what we'll be able to deal with. Hopefully we'll be able to get the funding to get them in. You'll do it, Maurice, will you? I'll get you the high-vis jacket. I can't pay you, but I'll get you a high-vis jacket, and I'll even make the lollipop for you myself. So yeah, so the second motion was in relation to the trimming back of trees. Now that those aren't the kind of the sexy motions that people expect, but the reality is that we had to get those kind of motions in before the ban on hedge cutting and all of these kind of stuff came in. And those trees did need those trees did need to be trimmed back because we need to provide we need to ensure that people living alongside those are safe. Yeah, Rachel's right, Maurice. You would have to be you would have to be paid and insured, because the last thing we want now is you getting run over by a car and having no way to look after you after that. So I suppose those were my two motions. Now motions result in action. So those are kind of action pieces that you put forward. So it's something that you put forward when you want something done. Questions are something that we use for clarification. So I put forward two questions this month. My first question was in relation to sorry. My first question was in relation to ensuring that we had, what was that? I was trying to find out what the amount of money for that we've pulled in for paid parking. Now I'm still waiting on full clarification for that, because the reality is that paid parking goes towards goes directly towards, gosh, what's the word? Sorry. Paid parking goes directly towards road work and footpath works within our MD. Now the reality is that our paid parking has dropped significantly, as would be expected as a result of the pandemic, and we've only pulled in approximately 71,000 this year, which means that our roads budget is going to be massively down. Now the reality is that should be topped up by central government, but it may not be, and it may mean that local property tax will have to go somewhere towards ensuring the roads are kept up to scratch this time around anyway. And then my second question, I asked that Kildare County Council provide an update on the bin survey that they were doing. So a number of months ago I asked that they do a survey on bins in relation to the level of disrepair, their cleanliness, where they are, the level of use. Are they close to other bins? Because the reality is that there are some areas where we have multiple bins in one area, and there are other areas where you have zero bins. Now, I'm not a put more bins in a place kind of person. I think people need to take responsibility for their own actions and bring their own rubbish home, or at the very least, they could crush their rubbish before they put it in a bin instead of putting full coffee cups, for instance, in a bin. I think we've all seen the issues around people being irresponsible around their own waste, and that is something that we need to deal with and people need to be aware of, because it does not kill somebody to bring home their own rubbish, to bring a plastic bag with themselves, pop it in the plastic bag and bring it home. So those are the pieces in relation to my motions. I don't really have anything else in relation to motions on that one. Has anybody got any other questions for me? No. Right, so then I promised an update as well in relation to the drug litter protocol. So as the chairperson of the drug litter protocol committee, we have had a number of meetings with the Kildare County Council's Environment Department in relation to developing and designing protocols for the effective disposal of drug-related paraphernalia. Now, drug-related paraphernalia, as I've said to many of you before, can be anything from a can or a bottle right the way down to a spoon. It could be a syringe or a needle. It could be those small silver canisters that I'm sure some of you have seen around. So it's in relation to developing a proper protocol around that and how we clean it, who cleans it, what's done, who we call, all of that kind of stuff. Now that may sound like the boring side of things, and you're not wrong, it is the boring side of things, but one of the roles of councillors is to ensure that we have effective policies, procedures and protocols in place. Now any SOC Dems who are on tonight will laugh at me for that, because they've heard me say policies, procedures and protocols quite a bit over the last couple of months. But anybody who knows me knows that that's kind of where I would obsess. I would obsess in the kind of the policies side of things, always have, and the protocol side of things, because I firmly believe that if we get the small things right, if we get those pieces right, that we can actually get the bigger pieces right. If we have effective policies, procedures and protocols there, so we know how things are supposed to be done, it would mean that people can advocate on their own behalf. My role as before I was a counsellor, before I was a counsellor, I was quite a number of other things. But quite a bit way back, I was a community development and youth worker, and I've always believed in empowering people to represent themselves, and I will always believe in empowering people to represent themselves. So that, I suppose, is the last piece that I had promised to give an update on. Amazing local campaigns. So I'm sure some of you may have seen on my page the campaign that is being done by Newbridge Family Resource Centre in relation to working to end period poverty. So I'm still open and accepting donations here in my office for Newbridge Family Resource Centre, because we're looking to develop period packs for people in direct provision, in homeless shelters, in emergency accommodation, in refuge centres, in any number of places where people may be disadvantaged. Hi Pat, how are you? Where people may be disadvantaged. So if anybody has any period products that they would like to donate, I am happy to take them here. Now I don't want your used period products. On the pineapple pizza debate, anybody who puts pineapple on pizza is an abomination. So just to go back to the period products piece. So we're collecting period products so that we can design and develop them into packs that can then be given out to the people who need them most. There's a couple of other things that we're looking to do with that, but that will be launched by Newbridge Family Resource Centre on International Women's Day, which is this Monday. Do schools get funding for period products? No, Rachel, currently schools do not get funding for period products, and that's one of the things that we're looking at trying to address with Newbridge Family Resource Centre in the interim. Now I know there is legislation coming down the line in relation to the provision of period products in schools. I will remember when I was in secondary school, there were some teachers there who always had period products for the students who needed them. But it still didn't lend itself to young women, non-binary people, and indeed trans men being able to ask for these products with dignity, because unfortunately some people are a little bit ashamed or embarrassed when it comes to asking for these things, and we do need to normalize periods. Yeah, so there you go. So you remember have to pay €1 for a pad in school, and that's the reality. You have kids who are asked to pay this money to get a pad, which is ridiculous when you think about the fact that you can get a pack of pads in Lidl, for instance, for 65 bloody cent, and you have teachers looking for €1 off students for them. So there's a piece there in which we need to look at ensuring that all students, all people who need period products, have equal access to period products. Those who can afford them can buy them. Those who can't afford them, we should be able to help. You see, Rachel, that's actually, that makes me angry, the fact that you had to give away some of your lunch money, which is something that's supposed to provide you with food for the day, in order to access hygiene products you should have access to. That is ridiculous and disgusting. And hopefully this end period poverty project that I'm helping Newbridge Family Resource Centre do will go a ways towards kind of reducing the impact of period poverty, especially on those most vulnerable. And we'll try and get there. Another piece. Now it's not something I've been working on, but 2 seconds. I just have to make sure I can find it, because I don't want to get this wrong. I've been contacted by a young gentleman here in the town who's been doing a fundraiser for Pieta House, which they've been doing really well. Now I'm just going to pop the fundraiser into the comments section there. It's been done by a young man named James Stokes and a friend of his. They're doing a fundraiser for Pieta House. Currently, they are actually on 320 out of their €500 goal with 15 donors, which is absolutely amazing. So if you can donate, do donate. If you'd prefer to donate to a local organisation, there is always Hope D, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to receive your donation. Thank you very much, Rayo. Enjoy your night. Good luck. Goodbye. So, has anybody any other questions? I have 14 minutes because I promised I wouldn't go off too soon before 8:45. I suppose the other piece I have for ye is I am in the process of setting up an email mailing list, or MailChimp mailing list. So what I'm going to do now as well is I'm going to pop the sign up form for my my mailing list in here. Because the reality is I'm well aware of the fact that a lot of the times people miss out on things that are on social media, and the best thing we can do is probably to share as much as we possibly can. So I've just popped in my MailChimp link there. If you want to sign up, please sign up. There's GDPR criteria and all on that, so please make sure you tick and allow for me to email you. Otherwise, there's no point in you being on my emailing list. But thank you very much for all coming on again tonight, folks. I know it's a Friday night at 8 o'clock. I'm bringing you on till about 9 o'clock. And as time goes by, I'm sure we'll find a different time that's suitable for all of us. And then I suppose, is there any other local campaigns that I'm aware of? No, not currently, but as per usual, I'll share them on my page. If you have any questions, as always, you know where my email is, my phone number, and you can always message me on Facebook. If you don't have credit, you can WhatsApp me if you're connected to Wi-Fi. If you're not connected to Wi-Fi, you can always call me and I will ring you back. Yeah, Paul, no problem. I'll definitely have a copy with you. Well, thank you very much, folks. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you all again next week, 8 o'clock, right here. What did they say? Same bat time, same bat channel. Bye now.